Okay, is this all right if I just hold it on my lap like this? Well, now I feel like I sound like I'm echoing in this room now. That's okay. But you can record like this. This is okay? You want it right here? Oh, man. Now I'm going to want to sing to you. Okay, so apparently I have slides. Let's see if this works. Here's what we'll do then. If I have to use the microphone and do this formally, we'll partly do the exercise, and partly because there's so few of us, we'll just walk through the thought process, because these fishbowl discussions are an experiment. We haven't done it before, and I'll show you what I would anticipate if we had a big group. So we've got this. Yeah, okay. This is a fishbowl experiment. So the experiment that we're intending to conduct here, and imagine if there's a handful of additional people in the room, is that after having participated in the sessions over the course of the week on the topic of disaster preparedness, I'm not the speaker. I'm not the presenter. I'm merely facilitating the feedback that everybody's received so that we can kind of culminate in a collaboration. That's what the fishbowl. None of us in the IF20, I'm the executive director now of the IF20, none of us yet know exactly what a fishbowl is because we haven't done it this way before. So here's how my experiment was going to work. We're doing disaster preparedness. BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. So think of whatever it is you come into the room thinking of disaster preparedness, think of that as your BHAG. I wish that our faith tradition, I wish that our group, I wish that our locality, I wish our organization could accomplish, and then it's the big goal. And what we want to do at the IF20 conference is to bring the two main components that allow that to happen. One is the technical collaboration. Do you have the tools? So let's say it's an energy problem. Our country needs to have more energy. Do we actually have the technical knowledge to build a nuclear power plant? The separate is the social capital. Do we have the people, even if we have the plans for the nuclear power plant, do we have the people, the engineers, the construction teams that all are able to work together to make that goal happen? Come on in. Oh, we've got a few more. We're just barely getting started. This is the fishbowl game. Feel free to come in. This is a very small group this morning. Hi, Allison. So we're doing. I have to use the microphone so they can record. Other than that, we're doing it informally. Okay. Okay, so that's what we intend to do here as IF20, and in the fishbowl, I'm going to kind of suggest one way to model that might make that work. Here's the game we're going to play. I'm calling it Wiki Wisdom. What's a wiki project? Anyone want to answer what's a wiki project? Come on, Esben.
I don't know, honestly.
Right? Crowdsourced. So like Wikipedia is a crowdsourced encyclopedia, and everyone can contribute to it on an open basis, but then the crowd collaborates with it as it goes. So it's a living thing that refines as a result of the collaboration. So what I want to do is play a game that we're going to call Wiki Wisdom. We're on the topic of disaster preparedness in the context of the IF20. All good games have rules. If there's no rules, it's not a game, right? You have to stay within the rules. So the rule number one is, when you speak, and this won't take long because there's only a handful of us, when you speak, introduce yourself. Don't just say your name. We don't get anywhere by just saying, I'm Whitney. So let me give an example. My name is Whitney Clayton. I've been the executive director of the IF20 for 5 months. I've had the privilege of working with this spectacular team in South Africa to ideally invite and bring all of you together. I come from a background largely in business. I grew up in California, and I've lived in China for 6 years and speak Chinese. There's my introduction, right? So as a result of saying something like that, we might actually remember something about each other, because part of this is social capital, right? Okay, number two. When we speak, we're talking about practical things. Faith-informed best practices. So at the IF20, if it's just policy, if it's just politics, and there's no religious component to it or faith component to it, that's not what we're working on here. If it's just religion, if it's just theology, and we're not talking about best practices for practical problems, that's also not IF20. It has to be at that intersection of both the faith component and the policy component. How do we actually solve problems that have been informed by our faith tradition? Number three, we're not going to call on other people to solve the problems. We're going to call upon ourselves. So we're not here in this closed room to call on some government leader who's not here to come solve the problems. We are going to talk about what we can do with those practical solutions, And then when each person talks, we're going to just gently and lovingly hold each other to 2 minutes, because the point isn't for, in this very short session, for anyone to take the floor and run with it. Okay. Here we go. Here's our wiki project. Question number 1, and whoever's going to answer first, remember, introduce yourself, don't just say your name. First question: what best practice or faith-based insight on the topic of disaster preparedness have you heard this week during the course of this conference that impressed you, that stuck with you? And I have a bunch of questions, so if one of them doesn't stick, it's just fine. I'm going to go right on moving. I've got a bunch of them in here. But would anyone like to get us going on the first topic? Fishbowl. We're all going to collaborate with each other. What practice or insight? This is holy envy. This is where we hear something else. We think, wow, I don't have that in my tradition or in my organization. That was cool. I wish I could adopt that. And then we're going to share it. Esben.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself. Don't just say your name.
My name is Esben Lunde Larsen. I am Danish, but I live in Washington, D.C., where I work for the Pandemic Fund at the World Bank. I am a PhD in theology, so my background is in faith tradition, though I don't work as such today. I chaired a panel discussion on global health and pandemic preparedness on Monday evening. And I was very impressed by the church in Ghana, how they had been running the COVID-19 projects or response on behalf of the government in Ghana. And at the World Bank and the Pandemic Fund, we are actually here to mobilize faith-based organizations to be a bigger constituency for the funding that we provide. And we provide around $1 billion annually to pandemic preparedness and response. And after this Monday evening, I met with a number of faith leaders within the health spectrum. And this is to what we want to do about it. And I think we will host a conference next spring together with the Health Commission on Georgetown, with a number of faith-based entities, to simply showcase how can faith-based organization, together with the 13 implementing entities at the Pandemic Fund, that is WHO, FAO, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and so on, how can they actually make proposals that we can award with funding together with the government of Kenya or the government of Zambia or whoever it could be. So this is a very tangible step forward, and I had not this insight. I knew that faith-based organizations do a lot of health work in the Global South, but I did not know the setups in detail that I saw here.
Keep that mic. This one might be on too. Is this one on? Yeah, we got, it's on as well. That's really interesting. Thank you, Esben. I want to ask a follow-up question on that then. So there was a group, did you say they were from Kenya?
They were from, so the group was from Ghana.
From Ghana.
Yeah.
What did they share, or what were they doing that impressed you? Because you've now taken the idea down the road. That's really interesting.
So the church in Ghana had organized at many levels COVID response and had received grants from the United Kingdom government as part of this, and the Development Aid Agency in the United Kingdom had been very, very impressed by how the faith-based organizations in Ghana had dealt with this, the transparency, the spending of the money, and so on. So they had awarded them the highest award, so to speak, as a partner. And one of the conversations we had was also around, I had to test if our model is eligible, is it actually relevant for faith-based organizations to work with the Pandemic Fund? And it was very clear in the conversations we had as follow-up, yes, it is. The challenge is when you work with faith-based organizations is really to get a grab, like what is faith-based organizations? How can you scale a model? And so on and so on. So this was really exploration, and I think we can get something good out of it because the faith-based organizations are a super interesting player. And what is equally interesting at the moment is that while many of the ordinary CSOs have been dependent on funding, for example, from US aid or other government agencies, the faith-based organizations, they are still the same, even though government funding changes. And that's why they are also interesting, because at the end of the day, everything comes with a cost. And when we give a $1, we generate $6 extra at the pandemic fund, and that is in co-financing. So therefore, the players we work with have to be able also to mobilize funding with their partners. Yeah. So it's not a giveaway shop we run. It's an investment in pandemic preparedness and response.
Thank you. So what I would then suggest, because thank you for the specificity. If we were to follow up on that further, as between the IF20 and your organization, I think it would be very interesting to look at that as a case study, and realizing you found this group, they attracted your interest, they appear to have used the funds very carefully in a way that then qualifies them for funding with your organization. If we use that as a case study or a model and template it out, other faith-based organizations could look at that model of success and say, oh, that worked for them, and then we could almost train people on how to do the same thing. Perfect. Is there another respondent who'd like to answer this question? Please, introduce yourself.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Grace Chirongo from Malawi. So I'm currently working as a research assistant on the project early warning systems, whereby we are working with different communities in Malawi, and one of it is Zareka refugee camp. So want to design the early warning system using citizen scientists. So we have recruited a citizen scientists who are trying to bring in the local knowledge into the early warning systems. When we think about early warning systems, normally we think about the scientific tools, but the indigenous people have got, they have been using the indigenous knowledge to also foretell about the issues of climate change. So one thing that I've learned from this conference is the idea of also considering diverse groups of different faith groups. We have recruited citizen science, but we didn't include the diversity of faith groups. So I think that one thing that I'm going to take forward, because I also believe that in these faith groups, they can also bring in their own indigenous knowledge. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's part of this cross-pollination that we're trying to encourage. Please, Homana, will you just hand the microphone back, please? Thank you, Grace.
I'm Romana Remor from Brazil, and I'm contribute to IF20, and I'm part of Roble del Sur Foundation that has its activities in the southern part of the Americas, in South America, and I'm a former congresswoman in Brazil. I was impressed with the seed bank that was briefly described yesterday. I would love to know more about that initiative. And also, I was impressed by one of the panelists that, by one of her statements, she said, and I agree, and she said that each faith-based organization has a vocation for action. And if they could focus on that vocation and do what they do best, and I'm sure that the results would be optimal. That really resounded in my thoughts, I agree. And I think that that articulation of the best practices of what, these organizations do best would optimize results. And I'm, the word's not impressed, but very happy to hear what you just said about this coming meeting. And that is very promising. That's it.
Thank you, Homana. That project with the seeds from Mr. Santosh, George, I think that caught a lot of people's attention. That one stuck with me as well. That's one that I think also relative to IF20 in our own communications might make sense for us to chase out a little bit more. Learn more about it. Again, template. What's the best practice? How does he actually do it? Is there a set of instructions or kind of a system? And could that be adopted by people in other places? That was a really interesting one. Are there any others that we'd like to flag any other holy envy before we move on to the next topic? Please, Allison. And by the way, Homana, if you haven't met Allison yet, she's the person that you might want to talk to about the seed project and Mr. Santosh. She can definitely help with that one.
Oh, that's it. I'm there already. Well, my name is Allison Egbert, and currently one of my projects, I'm president of the Las Vegas Alliance for Human Dignity. And although this is a little bit more about myself, I love this country, and the last time I came and I bungee jumped off Victoria Falls. So I love being back here because I'm still alive. But looking at this theme of faith-based and disaster relief, I'm going to go off a little bit on an over landscape view that I've seen these last few days, and that is personality of specific people. I have had holy envy for those people that have used the floor to say in their own practice, what can I individually change about myself? Not, we're in a disaster because so-and-so didn't do that for me, or that for me, or that for me, or that for me. They've taken a principle of their faith, of how individually can I see this problem that I'm facing and maybe increase my compassion, my inward ability to even forgive. And so that has been something I've seen, and I'm looking for my lovely nun sisters that I keep wanting just to hug every single one of them. They've been in a lot of the panels, and I've seen that light. So I have had a holy envy on those that individually have come here and say, well, maybe I'll change something about myself. And I hope I'm articulating that in the best way. And I see that also in my crazy city of Las Vegas, where I serve as well. So it's not only here, but it's in my neighborhood.
Thank you, Allison. In the interest of time, let's try the next question, because I've got a ton. We've only got a little bit of time. What was something that women or traditional groups are doing that impressed you? In the area of disaster preparedness, was there anyone that heard something from women or traditional groups? We just got one relative to the Catholic sisters. Is there another answer? We can go to the next question just in case. But I was also quite impressed by a lot of the things the Catholic sisters were doing. It's a small group, right? So let's go to the next question. How can you engage the power of the youth in your own organization? In the things that you're doing in disaster preparedness, how could you engage the youth in your organization more? I want to stick on this one, even if we have to pause and think about it for a second. I'll probably even pick on Michael in a moment. Michael, will you? I'm going to hand you the mic so you get recorded.
I mean, they're essential. In neighborhoods where I've lived in Salt Lake City, we try to work as a neighborhood to prepare for disasters, and the youth are part of that committee. And it doesn't just involve the congregation, but the neighborhood. When you respond to potential disasters, they need to be part of the of the plan. Part of it involves anticipating the types of disasters that are more likely in your neighborhood, and then deciding how it is that how you'll communicate. Some of that is based on what you do in the home, and each family or each home having a place to report back, so that if you can't use your cell phones, or if you're far away from your family when the disaster strikes, you know where you can meet. And that certainly involves the young people in each family being aware of that planning at the home level, and knowing how each family will have, or home will have their own disaster plan. But then at the neighborhood, they also have an important role in checking up on each home, seeing how people are doing. And in our neighborhood, we would go to the level of even assigning young people to check up on specific homes, usually in close proximity to where they live. So it's pretty detailed. The trick is when the disaster actually happens, will people remember and know what's been planned? So refreshing people's memory on a pretty regular basis so they know what to do is also an important part of it. So, but it definitely involves young people, and they may be in the best position to respond during a disaster, given their youth. So.
Thanks, Michael. But it sounds like in the disaster plan that you've been actively preparing in your neighborhood, that checking up and reporting back on the different households, you've already involved the youth in part of that process.
They're assigned. Yeah.
Anastasia, please.
Thank you. My name is Anastasia Jesperson, and I work with the G20 Interfaith Forum Association. And I don't know what else to tell you to introduce myself, but one thing you can remember from me, I actually live on an island, so you can remember me from that. So one of the things that I was, it kind of goes along with what you're saying, related to youth, in the impact of theology and advocacy and action, the examples of Laudato Si and El Mizan, that session, related, we had multiple youth on the panel, and there was a comment made about the youth, and I think this applies to when looking at disaster recovery, particularly in that, in that session we were talking about impact of climate change, right? And that's disasters is one of the big things that we address in that space, is that elders have wisdom and experience, and youth bring creativity, passion, and energy. They're change makers and they're peacemakers. And I really loved that because the comment was made that we need both. We have to work together. And in that situation, I think, particularly with even my own adult children, when we're talking about, youth, like being young adults, they have there's a lot of sense of hopelessness among the generation, because of the things that they're experiencing. But they have a seat at the table and they get to engage and use their talents and their energy and their ability. I think it addresses that and helps them it increases their personal resilience. And it helps us because they have all these amazing ideas and they have the passion and the energy. And I really loved that. I thought that was amazing.
Thank you, Anastasia. Let's go to the next question. How much more time do we have, by the way? I don't think we have much time. 8 minutes total, okay. What question do you wish you had been asked about your organization or tradition that you weren't asked relative to disaster preparedness? Is there something that you wish you'd been asked that you were hoping to be able to answer on this topic? Just in case, we're checking. Please, Hamana.
I can speak for the organization that I will refer to, but because I'm also involved with this organization and have participated in their climate and disaster response efforts, it occurred to me when someone said in one of the panels that each faith-based organization could focus on what they do best. I thought about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and how they are fast and effective in responding fast to natural disasters. And then I was just thinking about other faith-based organizations that are grassroots and that stay there, where that in vulnerable places and communities. And I was thinking that it's so needed that some organizations will be able to stay there, be there before and after, and continue the work that has to be done. But there needs to be one organization that is effective in going and responding to when life is threatened and when there is no food, there's no medicine. And so this organization that I cannot speak for, which is the Church of Jesus Christ, through LDS Charities and other wings it has, I think if they could have showcased how they do it and their expertise, and it would add to the efforts of other organizations that are there on the ground doing things before and that could carry on after. So that's what occurred to me.
Thank you. It's a really good example, and it creates opportunities for things that the IF20 could follow up by way of spotlight or templates or training in the future. I think that's good. Since we're almost done, let's just check the next question. I don't remember what order I put them in. This is, please. Oh, Michael, please. I'm going to go back. Michael, it's all yours. There you go.
Just really quickly, and this isn't in regards to a question here that I wish I'd been asked, but my wife is from Spain, and I pay close attention to the news. She's usually watching the news from Spain in the morning when we're having breakfast. And I recall a story about disaster preparedness and how governments in the EU are becoming much more serious about preparing their own citizens for potential disaster. In this case, it's potential conflict, given what's going on in the eastern part of Europe. And the news story featured some people who are complaining that apparently they thought, so the governments are asking individual citizens to prepare to do their part and do simple things in the home so that they're ready to respond quickly. And there are a number of organizations and individuals in that news story who are complaining that they were being asked to do that, that's why they pay taxes and the government should be preparing and taking those steps. And it kind of bothered me. The whole purpose of doing our part as individuals and as families and households to prepare is so that we're in a better position to assist other people who won't be in a good position or aren't, who will need assistance during a crisis, either because they're older or they have their own challenges, they may not be in good health. And so the whole purpose of disaster preparedness at an individual or family level or household level is so that is to help yourself so that you're in a better position to assist other people who will definitely need assistance. And we've seen disaster after disaster that it takes a long time for governments to respond, unfortunately, or it's simply a matter of the reality of the situation. I think about the floods in Valencia recently, and you need to be prepared so that you can help others, but you simply can't count on outside assistance to come quickly. So,
thank you. Thanks, Michael. Let's go to, well, this was my holy envy, but it doesn't look like we have any of the Catholic sisters. I was hoping we could get one of them to talk about what they're doing in disaster preparedness, because I just think their contributions at this conference have been so fantastic. And I've thought the same about the traditional female leaders that have spoken in a number of the sessions. But in the interest of our small group today, let's go to Spotlight, small group. Is there anyone in the room who wants to spotlight someone else? I think we may be such a small group. If we had 50 people in the room, right, we'd look around the room and say, I remember so-and-so said this, or that the other group contributed that. But I think we're probably too small of a group to do it. Do you feel proud of something in your own, that your own organization or faith tradition is doing in the area of disaster preparedness? We got a good answer from Omana a second ago.
It's not mine, can I still say
Yeah,
something?
absolutely.
Okay, I'm Melanie Barbato. I work at Pacifica Communities University in Fiji, and I'm also a member of the Religion and Environment group here. And I would like to say something about the Sikh and Hindu communities, which is not my own, but I've always been so impressed by their tradition of feeding people every week indiscriminately of what is the background. So when I visit a Sikh Gurdwara, they always invite me come back next week, and they have volunteers who get up so early in the morning and have these massive pots for feeding people. So that is not under the label of disaster preparedness, but when COVID-19 or other disasters strike, then the Sikh community, also Jain and Hindu community, other Indian traditions, they stepped up. So I think this is something that faith communities, they don't necessarily do these things under like programs of disaster preparedness, but based on their values. And this is how they can mobilize people also consistently. And yeah, it's something I think that should be taken forward from that experience of, for example, COVID-19, that these organizations deserve to be on the tables because they have the long-term structures and the intrinsic motivation of people. And that impressed me very much, especially about the Indian traditions.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Millie. I certainly could see where in a setting like that, in a community like that, that the leaders of that faith tradition, because of what they've established over a long period of time, if there was a disaster, they would inevitably be a hub of communication. They'd be somewhere that people would look to. They'd be a gathering point. They'd be real leadership when people need it. Yeah, that's fantastic. And network. Who is someone that you have met while you've been here that you can work with? And what did you learn about that person? What could you do with them? Is there someone you've met here that you can work with in the area of disaster preparedness? Have we made any of those connections? I'm not seeing the not. When you look at the room, sometimes people go, oh yeah, and sometimes they're like, oh, I have no idea. This might be a no idea one, but we're also a small group in here. And that's also partly me taking the temperature as an organizer, thinking, are we accomplishing the goals that we're setting out to accomplish here, right? Because if you're not walking away with additional technical skills, and if you're not walking away with the social capital, with additional network to be able to do the things you need to do, I don't think we're getting all the way to where we need to be in the IF20 conference. Let's look at the next one. We call upon ourselves, I think this is the last one. What's something that you feel called to do as a result of thinking through the topics this week in the area of disaster preparedness? Is there anything that's touched anyone in their soul, right? You think, oh, that's something I need to get to work on with my group or my organization or in my community. Omana, closing it off for us, I appreciate it.
I think one message that will go back with me is, and regarding disaster preparedness, is to get engaged, do more than what I'm doing, and learn more from organizations that are already doing their best where I live and where I can somehow contribute, and then get involved.
Thank you very much. And I think on that note, we'll conclude. Small fishbowl session, small experiment. We'll see if we decide to continue with this sort of a format of future IF20s. But let's move on. There it is, 3 minutes left. I think we're good to go. Let's move on with the rest of the conference, and we're building towards our conclusion here. Thank you very much. Thanks for participating.